I had my doubts about the day from the moment I woke up. The sky was gray, typical for late autumn, and there was a chill in the air that seemed to seep through the windows. I was scheduled to interview the state governor, an opportunity any journalist would kill for, and yet, I was uneasy. Maybe it was the weight of responsibility or the fact that my little Ellie had woken up with a slight fever. Either way, the day felt off. I dropped Ellie off at my mom's place, giving her a quick kiss on the forehead before heading to the governor's office. My mom, always the worrier, said, "Make sure you watch yourself around those politicians. They're all smiles and handshakes until they're not." At the governor's office, I was met by his assistant, a man named Tom. He was a bit older than me, probably edging into his early 40s, with a sharp suit and a smile that managed to be both professional and warm. "Clara, right? Heard a lot about you. All good, promise," he said, extending his hand. "Yeah, that's me. And you're Tom? I appreciate the help setting this up," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. The interview itself went better than expected. The governor was forthcoming, even charming, and I got some good quotes that I knew would make my editor happy. But it was Tom who caught my attention. He lingered nearby, always watching, making sure everything was in order. After the interview, while I was packing up my recorder and notes, Tom came over. "You got plans after this? There's a decent coffee place just around the corner. Their espresso will knock your socks off." I hesitated for a moment. It wasn't like me to mix work with anything personal, but there was something about Tom's straightforward manner that was disarming. "Sure, why not? I could use a good coffee after this," I replied. At the coffee shop, the conversation flowed easily. Tom talked about his daughter Amy, who was about to graduate high school and had plans for college. "She's got her mother's brains. Smart as a whip. I just try to keep up," he laughed. "I know the feeling. My Ellie's only 6, and she already outsmarts me daily," I said, laughing along. We talked more about our kids than anything else. It was refreshing to have a conversation that wasn't just about work or politics. Tom's demeanor was relaxed, and he didn't push the conversation in any direction it didn't naturally want to go. It was like talking to an old friend. As we left the coffee shop, Tom said, "Listen, Clara, I know you're not looking for anything serious. Heck, I'm not either. But I liked this, talking, laughing. How about we do this again? No pressure, no expectations." I looked at him, really looked. He was sincere, that much was clear. "Yeah, I'd like that," I admitted, a bit surprised at my own readiness to dive back into something personal. There I was, 2 years into what started as a not-a-date routine with Tom, and suddenly I found myself staring at a small, shiny ring, feeling like the world had stopped spinning for just a second. We were at our favorite little Italian place, tucked away in a corner booth that had become our spot. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows that danced around Tom's serious expression. He'd just popped the question, simple and straight, no fluff. "Clara, I'm not good with fancy speeches. So, how about it? Will you marry me?" Looking into his hopeful eyes, all I managed was, "Are you sure? Because, you know, life with me is a three-ring circus." Tom laughed, that deep, reassuring sound that had first drawn me to him. "I'm counting on it. Ellie's a part of the deal, right? Wouldn't have it any other way." "Okay then, yes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Yes, I'll marry you." Tom's place was bigger, with a yard that seemed to stretch forever and rooms that echoed with the potential of new memories. The first evening we spent there, Tom cooked dinner, something he'd become famous for during our not-a-date dates. Ellie watched him like a hawk, her curiosity barely contained. "Tom, are you sure you know how to cook? Mom usually burns the pasta," she stated matter-of-factly, standing on tiptoe to peer over the counter. Tom winked at her, tossing vegetables in a pan with a chef's flair. "I promise I won't burn anything. Scout's honor." The transition wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. Ellie and I were used to it being just the two of us against the world. Now, Tom was in the mix, with his easy smiles and a way of making even the hardest day seem manageable. We were learning to be a family, and not just any family, a good one, a real one. Life in Tom's house was starting to feel more like home every day, but there was still one piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit: his daughter, Amy. She was in college in another city, and we didn't see her much. The few times we did, the air felt charged, like a storm was always about to break. Amy came home for Thanksgiving, and I wanted everything to be perfect, to maybe smooth out some of the awkwardness that seemed to cling to the walls whenever she was around. I was in the kitchen when she walked in, her bags dropping to the floor with a thud. "Hey, Amy, good to see you. Let me help with that," I offered, moving towards her. She gave me a half-smile, more out of politeness than warmth. "Thanks, Clara. I've got it." Tom was all smiles, ruffling her hair like she was still 10 years old. "Kiddo, your mom sent some of that pumpkin pie you love. Bet you missed real food at college, huh?" Amy rolled her eyes, but there was a small smile there that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, Dad. College food is the worst." Dinner was a quiet affair, with Ellie trying to fill the silence with chatter about her school projects and the new friends she had made. Amy nodded and made the right noises, but spent more time pushing her food around the plate than eating it. After dinner, I caught her in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Amy, can we chat? I feel like we never really got off on the right foot here," I ventured, keeping my tone light. She looked up, her expression guarded. "We're fine, Clara. There's no issue to fix." I took a deep breath, choosing my words. "I know it's weird, me being here and all. I'm not trying to replace anyone or step on toes. I just want us to be okay, you know?" Amy put her phone down, her face softening a bit. "I get it. It's not you. It's weird seeing him move on, I guess." "I understand. Just know I'm here, alright? For you, too," I replied, hoping to bridge the gap between us. She nodded, a bit of the ice melting. "Thanks, Clara. I'll try to be less of a hermit, okay?" It was a start, and I'd take it. The weekend passed quicker than I wanted, and soon it was time for Amy to head back to college. She hugged her dad, gave Ellie a high five, and to my surprise, she turned to hug me too. It was quick and a bit awkward, but it was something. "Take care, Amy. Keep in touch, okay?" I said, feeling like we'd turned a corner. Ellie, who had been unusually quiet, tugged at my hand. "Is Amy mad at me? She doesn't talk much." I knelt down to her level, smoothing back her hair. "No, sweetie, she's not mad. She's just used to being on her own. We'll keep trying, okay?" Navigating new family dynamics was never going to be easy, but I believed in us. With patience and a lot of open hearts, I hoped we'd find our way to being not just a family by name, but one in spirit too. My job as a journalist meant erratic hours and sudden trips out of town, but Tom had stepped up in ways I hadn't even dared to hope for. He picked Ellie up from school, made dinner, and seemed to genuinely enjoy the rhythm of our new life together. Initially, Ellie was thrilled, always chattering about her day on the ride home, eager to show off the little projects she'd done in class. "She's really taken to you, Tom," I told him one evening, watching them assemble a puzzle on the living room floor. He looked up, a smile creasing his eyes. "She's a great kid, Clara. Couldn't ask for a better stepdaughter." But a few months in, I noticed a shift in Ellie. She became quieter, more reserved. The light in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a skittishness that set alarm bells ringing in my mind. I tried to coax her into talking, to share what was on her mind, but she just shrugged and forced a smile. "It's nothing, Mom. Just tired, I guess," she'd say, but the mother in me knew better. Something was off. Then one night, as we were getting ready for bed, I noticed a bruise on her arm, a nasty, purple shadow that made my heart stop. "Ellie, what happened?" I asked gently, trying not to sound as panicked as I felt. She avoided my gaze, fiddling with the hem of her pajama top. "I fell down at school. It was silly." I wasn't looking where I was going. But the bruise looked like it had a story that didn't involve a simple fall. My mind raced with dark thoughts of bullying. Did someone do this to you at school? You can tell me, Ellie. She shook her head quickly, too quickly. No, Mom. It was just me being clumsy. Really. The next day, I dropped by her school and spoke with her teacher, Mrs. Jennings, a kind woman who had always been open about classroom dynamics. Mrs. Jennings, has Ellie been having any trouble with other kids? Any signs of bullying? Mrs. Jennings looked genuinely surprised. Oh, no, Clara. Ellie gets along well with everyone. She's a quiet child, but she's not having any problems with other children that I've noticed. That left me more unsettled. If school was fine, then what was causing Ellie's change in behavior and the mysterious bruise? My mind churned with possibilities, none of them good. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I decided to buy a smartwatch that could record audio. I told myself it was for Ellie's safety, that I wasn't invading her privacy but protecting her. When I gave her the watch, her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in weeks. Wow, a smartwatch? For me? Ellie's voice was filled with excitement. Yep, you can wear it to school and everywhere. Think of it as an early birthday gift, I explained, trying to keep my voice cheerful. I watched her strap the watch to her wrist, her fingers fumbling with excitement. My heart was heavy with mixed feelings as she admired it. I hoped the watch would provide answers, that it was just my overactive imagination at work and nothing more. The routine with the smartwatch started off innocent enough. For days, all I heard were snippets of school lessons and the mundane chit-chat of children's lives. Ellie seemed happier at school, laughing and interacting freely, which was a stark contrast to her quiet demeanor at home. It gave me some peace of mind, hearing her like that. But that peace was shattered one busy afternoon at work. I had stepped out for a quick lunch at my desk, popping in my earbuds to listen to the latest recordings from Ellie's watch. It was a habit now, checking in on her world, making sure she was okay. That day, however, I was met with something that stopped me cold. Tom's voice boomed through the tiny speakers, harsh and cruel. You're such a fool, Ellie. Why can't you ever listen? His words were sharp, each one a dagger. The reply was a small, stifled sob, unmistakably Ellie's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Then the sound, a sharp slap, the kind of sound that echoes long after it's over, followed by Ellie's crying. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gasp. My heart raced, anger and shock warring inside me. This wasn't just a small misunderstanding. This was my worst fear laid bare. I sat frozen, my lunch forgotten, as the world continued bustling around me. I couldn't think straight. All I knew was I needed to get to Ellie, to hold her, to get her away from him. I rushed home, my mind racing, planning, dreading. When I arrived, Ellie was there, alone, sitting quietly in her room. Seeing her like that, so small, so vulnerable, it broke something inside me. Ellie, baby, we need to talk, I said gently, sitting beside her on the bed. She looked up, her eyes wide and scared. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. I know about Tom, about how he's been treating you. You don't have to be scared anymore. I heard everything. The floodgates opened then, and she poured out everything. The threats, the hits, how he'd made her promise not to tell me, how scared she was that it was somehow her fault. My heart ached with every word. I packed a few things quickly and drove her to my parents' house. They were horrified when I told them everything, and they didn't hesitate to take us in. Stay here tonight, my mom said, her voice firm with that maternal resolve. We'll take care of Ellie. You go sort this out. I hugged Ellie goodbye, her small arms clinging to me a moment longer than usual. I'll fix this, I promise, I whispered, kissing her forehead. Leaving her there, safe with my parents, I drove back home. The house seemed darker, colder. I sat on the couch, the silence oppressive, waiting for Tom to come home. My mind raced with what I would say, how I would confront him. Anger, fear, betrayal, it all swirled inside me, a storm waiting to break. The sound of the front door opening and Tom's cheerful whistling sliced through the tense silence of the living room where I was waiting. He came in, all smiles, utterly unaware of the storm that was about to break. "Hey, babe. What's for dinner?" His voice rang through the house, light and carefree. I stood up, my stomach churning with nerves and anger. "We need to talk. Now," I said, my voice steely and calm. The smile faltered on his face. "Sure, what's up? You look serious." "It's about Ellie," I began, watching as his expression shifted from confusion to concern. "What about her? Is she okay?" He took a step towards me, his brow creased. I cut him off, the fury building inside me. "No, Tom, she's not okay. Because of you." He stopped, his face a mask of bewilderment. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the abuse, Tom. I know how you've been treating her when I'm not around." The words felt like bullets, each one harder to say than the last. For a moment, he just stared at me, and then he laughed. A cold, harsh sound that echoed mockingly around the room. "You're being ridiculous. You have no proof. You think you can take me down? With what? Your overactive imagination?" His arrogance boiled my blood. "I have more than enough proof, Tom." He smirked, stepping closer. "Come on, Clara. You and I both know you're bluffing. If you push this, I'll make sure you regret it. I can destroy your career, drag your name through the mud. Don't forget, I have connections that you can't even dream of." The threat hung in the air, heavy and sinister. But I was ready for him. I pulled out my phone and hit play on the recording of his tirade against Ellie. His voice filled the room, cruel and unmistakable. Tom's face went white, his confident demeanor crumbling as the reality of his situation dawned on him. "Clara, please, I was just stressed, I didn't mean." "Save it, Tom. I'm done listening to your excuses." I watched as he sank to his knees, his face crumpled in fear. "Clara, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, I can change. Don't do this. Don't ruin my career and my life. You should have thought about that before you hurt our daughter. You're not getting away with it this time." I stood firm, despite the part of my heart that ached to see him so broken. But I had to be strong, for Ellie. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I walked past Tom, still kneeling on the floor, and opened the door to 2 police officers. I had called them before Tom got home, the final step in ensuring my daughter's safety. "Officers, thank you for coming. He's in here," I said, leading them into the living room. Tom looked up, the fear apparent in his eyes as the officers read him his rights and handcuffed him. He muttered pleas for forgiveness as they led him away, but I felt nothing but a hollow relief. Ellie was safe now, and that was all that mattered. After the door closed behind them, the silence was deafening. I sank down onto the couch, the adrenaline fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I knew this was only the beginning of a long battle, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. Ellie was safe, and Tom would face the consequences of his actions. It wasn't long before the news exploded, splashing across every headline and becoming the talk of the town. But nothing prepared me for the knock on my door early one morning, just as the chaos was unfolding. I opened the door to find my first husband, Michael, the father of Ellie, standing there, his face etched with concern and a hint of anger. Beside him stood his lawyer, a sharply dressed man known for his ruthless courtroom tactics, his reputation preceding him. "Clara, we need to talk," Michael said without wasting a moment, pushing past the formalities as his lawyer followed suit. I sighed, stepping aside to let them in. "I guess we do." Once we were all seated in the living room, his lawyer, Mr. Davidson, wasted no time. "Clara, Michael here is very concerned about the welfare of Ellie and how this scandal could affect her. We want to ensure that her interests are protected, legally and financially." Michael chimed in, his voice firm. Clara, I won't let our daughter be dragged through the mud because of him. What were you thinking, getting involved with a guy like that? I bristled at his tone, my own anger rising. I was thinking that I found someone decent, which he seemed to be, until he wasn't. I'm handling it, Michael. As we debated back and forth, my phone buzzed. It was Amy, Tom's daughter, a message filled with urgency. I have something you need to see. Can we meet? I excused myself and stepped outside to call her. Amy, what's going on? Clara, I've got evidence. Evidence of what he did, not just to Ellie, but to me too, when I was younger. I'm ready to stand with you in court. Amy's voice was resolute, a stark contrast to the young woman who'd been so unsure before. Thank you, Amy. This means a lot. Let's bring this to light, all of it, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. Back inside, I relayed the news to Michael and Mr. Davidson. Looks like we'll have more than just our word against his. We have evidence, solid evidence, and his own daughter's testimony. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, Clara. We'll support you in this, all the way. Just make sure it's handled with Ellie's best interest at heart. The court date was a spectacle, with reporters swarming the courthouse. Amy took the stand, her voice steady as she recounted years of hidden abuse. The evidence she provided was undeniable, the impact on the courtroom palpable. When the judge finally passed the sentence, it was more than I had dared to hope for. Tom was found guilty of child abuse and domestic violence. The judge awarded a significant fine in favor of both me and Amy, and Tom was sentenced to prison. His political career, his reputation, everything crumbled in the wake of his actions. The fresh start was exactly what Ellie and I needed. After everything that happened, buying a new house felt like claiming back a piece of ourselves that had been lost in the chaos. The house was smaller, cozier, a place where the shadows of our past couldn't reach us. Moving day was a mix of laughter and hard work, with boxes labeled Ellie's stuff outnumbering everything else. Mom, can I paint my room purple this time? Ellie asked, her eyes sparkling with the sort of excitement that had been missing for too long. Sure thing, kiddo. Whatever you want, I replied, grateful to see her so happy, so full of life again. We spent that first night on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes, eating pizza, and planning out what we'd do with each room. It was perfect, just the two of us, and yet, there was a new addition to our little family dynamic that I hadn't anticipated. Amy, Tom's daughter, had become a fixture in our lives. After the trial, something shifted between us. The shared trauma had bound us together, and she started coming around more often, helping with the house, bringing over books she thought Ellie would like, or just hanging out, talking about everything and nothing. Clara, you really didn't have to redo the guest room just for me, Amy said one afternoon as she helped me peel off old wallpaper. It's not just for you. It's your room, whenever you need it. Your family now, Amy, I said, and I meant it. She smiled, a little watery-eyed, and we went back to our task. In a twist I never saw coming, Michael, my ex-husband, started showing up too. First, it was to drop off Ellie or pick her up, but then it became coffee visits, then dinners. We talked a lot, about Ellie, about our past, about how we could never have imagined our lives intertwining like this again. Clara, I appreciate you letting me back in, after everything, Michael said to me one evening as we sat on the new deck, watching Ellie and Amy chase each other around the backyard. Michael, we're navigating through uncharted waters, but I think we're doing just fine, I replied, the ease between us a pleasant surprise. The relationship with Michael evolved, slow and steady. We were parents first, friends second, and if there was a hint of something more, we let it grow at its own pace. Ellie thrived in the new environment. Her laughter filled the house, her smiles more frequent and brighter. Seeing her like this, I knew we had made the right decision. Mom, look. I taught Amy how to make slime. Ellie exclaimed one Saturday morning, her hands and face speckled with glitter. Amy came into the kitchen, looking like she had fought a battle with a unicorn and lost. Yeah, she did. I think I have glitter in my hair still. she said, trying to brush it out, but laughing. Watching them together, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had weathered a storm, fought hard battles, and now, here we were, building a life full of hope and happiness. As the days grew warmer, our little household found its rhythm. We were a patchwork family, each of us with our own scars and stories, but together, we were whole.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.